Good evening, everyone. My name is Dana Cole, and welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living, Greater Baltimore Wednesday Oasis. And this evening, we have a special guest, Jenny Robertson, who has been a member of the New Thought community in the Baltimore area for years now, and very inspirational woman in our metro area across the Eastern Seaboard and across the world. So I'd just like to share with you a bit about Jenny before we start our Oasis today. Jenny discovered Science of Mind in 1989, and it's been her go to spiritual teaching since. And so for 24 years, she's offered women entrepreneurs opportunities for deep connection and supported them in being seen and heard so they can share their gifts and make their unique difference. Jenny is the founder of the On Purpose Woman Global Community and On Purpose Woman magazine. She's also the host of the Real Woman, Real Purpose talk show on YouTube. She's a speaker, writer, and the lead author of On Purpose Woman, the complete holistic guide for spiritual entrepreneurs, which was released in fall of last year. It can be found anywhere you can find your book. So, welcome, Jenny. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Dana. I'm so happy to be here. I've missed y'all, haven't seen y'all for quite some time. So let's see. As Dana said, I did discover the Science of Mind back in 1989. And the reason that I was drawn to it is because it had some similarities to a program I'd been doing through a seminar company. And I'd actually done all three pieces of their program. I was invited to go through their facilitator training program and ended up working for them for a while. And during that time, I developed a talk, and it was a 1 hour talk called Getting Out of Your Own Way. I presented it I presented it at a professional development seminar put on by Clemson University. And it was my first major public speaking gig. They didn't know that, but they didn't ask. And so I didn't tell them. And what I lacked in speaking experience, I think I made up for with my enthusiasm and belief in this topic. And so since then, I've done a variation of that talk over 100 times. And more than 20 years ago, I developed a full day workshop called Getting Out of Your Own Way, which I offer a couple of times a year. So it is a topic that I'm passionate about. And so getting out of your own way, it's not a science of mind principle, but I'm going to look to you all to just come up with in yourself when I'm touching on a science of mind principle in here, because I'm not going to tell you where it is. But my title, Getting Out of Your Own Way, implies that you and only you can keep you from having the life that you say that you want. Would you all agree with that? Give me a thumbs up or a nod there. Yeah, okay. If that's true, then the good news is you are also the only one who can change it. And I think that's about as basic as it gets. We're in charge, we can change it, right? And so if you're feeling stuck or fearful or indecisive or guilty or angry or worried, it may be because you've made up stories about the situation. I made up a word, I probably didn't make it up, but I'd never seen it before. I call it awfulizing. We awfulize things and we make up these stories and we go down like a rabbit hole with it. And so when we awfulize it, it's based on what we already believe on an unconscious level to be true. So, for example, let's say you sent an email to a friend wanting to get together and you didn't hear back, and you start making up stories. Maybe you don't do this, but I've been known to do this before. Wonder why they haven't
Mm,
gotten back to me. Did I do something? What was the last time we got together? Did I say anything then? Are we okay? When all you really know is I sent an email and there was no response. You don't even know if the person got the email. Now, I don't know why it's so much easier to stay in that state of mind of making up stories that probably have no basis in fact. Why is that easier than just picking up the phone and calling the person and say, "Did you get my email?" But I think sometimes we don't want to know the truth. We fear the truth, right? So we'll stay in this weird place of making up stories. And making up stories can become a fallback position. And you'll start to worrying at that yucky feeling in your gut and not even know why you're feeling that way. And anything can trigger it. So when life isn't going the way you planned, it will often be going the way that you expect. And it may help to go back to basics and see if your thinking and your beliefs are actually in line with your truth. We filter everything through our perceptions, and I'll call it our point of view. Your point of view takes time to develop. It can become firmly entrenched without you even knowing what's in it. Your point of view is made up of all your past experiences and input from various people in your lives. It may vary in intensity from one thing to another. For example, I have a very strong point of view about turnips. I had one once when I was a kid. We had a rule in my family that you had to try everything once, but you didn't have to eat it again if it like made you gag, right? And turnips made me gag. And so I have a very strong point of view about turnips. I will not eat them. Now, that point of view does not affect my life a whole lot. I've never been offered a turnip at a party. Nobody's ever said to me, if you don't eat turnips, your life is in jeopardy. So disliking turnips is a point of view that I can live with very easily. But think about those points of view that we developed at a very young age that do affect us and how we live our lives. For example, a point of view about who we are and our place in the world. And do we fit in? Do we deserve what we want? Are we smart enough? Are we tall enough? Are we, all those things that we do in comparison? A lot of that stuff came through, many say, by the time we were 6 years old. People way smarter than me on this subject say that by 6 years old, our consciousness and our points of view are firmly in place. What we believe to be true about the world. Is it a safe place? Is it not a safe place? Are we loved? Are we not loved? And that's the not so great news about this. There's also some good news about this. The good news is we have the ability to shift it. We're not stuck with it, but we have to become aware of it. Because if you have a point of view that is so strong, it will become the truth for you. I think these things that come in, like I say, often at a very young age, and they become entrenched, but we don't even think about it. We just react from that place. That is responsible for so much, if not all, of the prejudices in the world. We don't even know why we feel the way we do. We just know that somebody told us something back then, and maybe somebody we respected, and it's stuck. And so when we operate from that place, we're not being conscious. If your point of view does not support you loving yourself and living a joyful life, it will get in your way without you even needing to know that that's what you believe. So you can start to get out of your way by examining your points of view in areas where you feel stuck to see if you're in alignment with what you want to create. And if you're not in alignment, it will require a mindset change. Otherwise, you'll keep telling yourself the same sad story and getting the same sad results. So if you do believe that your thinking creates your reality, everybody believe that? How about you get what you expect, that what you resist persists, and that what you put your attention on expands? You need to know what you're thinking, what you're expecting, what you're resisting, and what has your attention. And then you can start to shift it. Now, you don't have to go deep on that. You really don't have to go deep. We just have to pay attention. Wow, this is what I'm thinking right now. That must be what I believe, right? We don't have to go looking for it. It's right there all the time. So I'm going to give you an example of an unconscious truth. I love speaking and I love having interactive sessions because I get some of my best material from those sessions. And a number of years ago, I was doing a talk much like this for the local chapter of the American Association of University Women. And I had asked the women there were about 100 women in the room, and I'd asked them to think of something that we believe is true that some other women in the room may not believe, that we have a really strong feeling about. And the typical answers are usually around politics and religion, because we get really entrenched in those. But there was a young woman in the back. She was probably in her mid-20s, and she was jumping up and down, raising her hand and going, me, I want to tell you. And I asked her what it was. She stood up and she goes, I believe that all men are slime. And there were actually some women in the room who went, yeah. And there were other women in the room looking puzzled, like, what are you talking about, right? And so I asked her if I could work with her a little bit, and she agreed, and she was very gracious. And I asked her, when I told everyone to come up with something that you really believe, obviously you believed. I forgot to tell you all, I asked them to do something else. I asked them to come up with something that they really wanted for their life. I said, what did you write down? And she said with such conviction, I want to be in a committed, loving relationship and married with children. Dana, I can see you cracking up there. Yes. And everyone in the room started laughing except for her because, it's so much easier to see other people's stuff than it is to see our own because we're right here, aren't we? We can't even see it. And I said, wow. I didn't call it out right then, but I said, do you date much? And she goes, oh, I go out sometimes, but there's no good men out there. And I just know that when I go out, they're going to do something. They're never, they're what I think they are. And I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop and all this. And I said, and again, I did this with loving kindness. I said, there are good men out there, but I'm afraid they're running for cover. I said, because you've already made up a story about every man before he even shows up. You've already decided that he can't be trusted. He's not for real. He's slime. I mean, slime, that's a pretty heavy thing. And I said, do you see how you have set it up to never get what you want? And she stood there for a minute, and I thought she was going to maybe argue with me a little bit. And all of a sudden, this look came over her. Talk about an aha moment. This look came over her, and she went, oh, and you could just see it, her body language. In fact, I just got chills thinking about it. And I said, your belief is so strong. And I said, and I don't doubt that you have some evidence for that belief. I said, but you have to ask yourself, is it serving you now? Maybe it was true at one point in your life that that's who was coming in, but does it serve you now? And so we moved on a little bit. I don't know whatever happened to her. I didn't know her then and I didn't know her after, but I love that she did that. And I think I may have helped her a little bit, but I like that I have that story to tell because what a great example of how we can get so stuck in our belief system and it's smacking right up against what we say we want to live a happy, joyful, successful life. And so I have another story that I want to tell you about my story. I was around the age of 7. We went to church and we were Methodists back then, and we'd missed Palm Sunday. And so we showed up on Easter Sunday. And if you've ever been in a Christian church on Easter Sunday, it's pretty packed, a lot of people there. And my Sunday school class was going to do a little pageant for the church. And since I wasn't there Palm Sunday when they handed out the rolls, I didn't have a role yet. And so my Sunday school teacher wanted me to participate. So she handed me a poem that I could read. Well, I was a really precocious little girl, and I had this photographic memory at that point in my life. And everybody else had time and everybody else had memorized their parts. And I was not going to be the only child who went up front reading something. So I had about 20 minutes. I sat down, I memorized my poem. I couldn't tell you how long it was. Could have been 4 lines, could have been 10. Don't remember the poem at all. I was so confident when it was my turn. I left the poem with my mother in the pew and I went up to the front of the church and I started to recite my poem. What I remember now, I remember what I had on. I had one, those of you who are old enough to know those crinolines that make your dress stand out. I had a little lacy umbrella purse in the shape of an umbrella. I had on a little bonnet and I start reciting my poem. And again, I don't know how far I got into it, maybe a line or two. All I know is that all of a sudden, not only did I not know what I was going to say next, I didn't even know where I was. Anybody had that experience? My mind went blank. It was almost like things got dark around me and I heard like a buzzing in my ears. And so somebody laughed in the church. This man, I heard a laugh and I ran out the door. And so I flung myself under a weeping willow tree and I wept and I cried and I was upset. And my mother came out and she tried to console me. I was inconsolable and I refused to go back in the church. And she didn't make me. I stayed out there all by myself. Church is over. People are coming out. My parents are standing there with me. And these people are saying to my parents, that was so cute. That was so cute. That just kind of broke things up a little bit. That was really cute. And I'm sitting there thinking, that was not cute. I was a 7-year-old humiliated little girl. Way home, nobody talked about it. Nobody mentioned it to me. Finally, we got home, my mother said, don't worry about it. Next week, nobody will remember what happened. That's all that was said. Fast forward, I usually tell this in reverse, but I decided to do it this way this time. Fast forward about 25 years. I'm working at a fairly high level position in a local bank, and I'm supposed to go to the Mortgage Bankers Conference in New York City next week. And the president of the company came into my office and said the Mortgage Bankers Association lost a panelist for their customer service panel, and you're going to do it instead. And I said what I always said when somebody asked me to speak. I said, I don't do that. It's not my thing. And he said, this is not a request. Now, I didn't think I would be fired, but I knew that it couldn't bode well for my career if I said no. And he said, you have the best customer service department in the industry. You know your stuff. So I did it, and it was fine. I did okay. I didn't bomb, but it was a fairly simple way to start that thing. But here's what happened. The moment I said, I don't do that, I've been doing a lot of work on myself. Now, keep in mind, I didn't remember this story from when I was 7. But I didn't even have to make it up. It was real. I didn't know why I always said no to speaking. And so, but as soon as I told him I don't do that, this voice in my head said, how do you know you don't do that? You've never done it. And so I got curious and I started to think, because, again, I'd been going deeper and things were opening up and thought, wow, why don't I do that? And I started doing some journaling and doing some thinking around it. And then all of a sudden that memory popped in out of nowhere. And I'm like, am I making this up? Or did this really happen? I called my mother and asked her if it really happened. And she went, oh yeah, it was pretty bad. I think she might have been a little embarrassed because, she liked having perfect little girls. So I kind of messed up, I guess. And I realized that belief I had that I had created with limited information. I mean, think about that. Somebody laughed and I just thought, I'm done, right? Now it would have been humiliating had nobody laughed because, who wants to do that? But I was so full of myself that I didn't take my paper up there, and I had no fallback. I had to run out the door, I thought. And so I started to realize that, wow, I've got this, let me see how, I do this. And after I did the stint in New York, I liked it, but I want to do some more of this. And I started taking, all of a sudden, guess what happened? Speaking engagements started showing up. And so when I got that first speaking engagement with Clemson University, again, I wasn't the best speaker there, but I was pretty good, but I loved how it felt. And so had I not questioned, it takes curiosity to make changes. Had I not questioned that belief and seen the root of it maybe, or maybe I could have just made a decision possibly that I wasn't going to believe that anymore, I might not have made a change. I was the president of the Thespians Club when I was a senior. Thespians are actors. I mean, and I was never, teachers would say, why don't you try out for the play, Jenny? And I would always say the same thing. Oh, I don't really do that. It's not my thing. But I loved running stuff. So, being the president was pretty cool because I got to run some stuff. And so I'm telling the story just because there's things that, don't seem like, I mean, they seem like a huge deal when you're a kid, but they're really in the big picture aren't that big of a deal. And yet they can just run the show. And so to get out of our way, it helps to kind of know what the show's about. Again, we don't have to go back and dig everything up, but just to start to have the awareness. And I think it'll come, all the people in this community you all work on yourselves. You all are open to shifting and changing and growing. And those kind of things come in much more easily when we're open like that. And so I'm going to shift a little bit now and tell you the 3 top unconscious beliefs that I think get in our way. And they have nothing to do with speaking. One is, I don't have enough time. The second one is, I don't have enough money. And the third one is, I don't have enough energy. Now, I've heard people say that we always have enough time, money, and energy for the things that are important to us. And I think that's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of beliefs. You have to have your basic needs met before you can be in that position. I'm not going to tell a mother who's homeless with a child that she always has enough time, money, and energy for the things that are important. That would be cruel and not true, right? At least for her consciousness at that moment. But I do, right? I have enough time, money, and energy for the things that are important once I deem what's important. And if I don't, I can go about creating what I need. And so I'm going to give you an example of this, of how this can get in our way. You all are on my fourth Zoom today. I've had a really busy week. I did a 2-day event on Friday and Saturday, and I've decided that I was going to go out and meet a friend for dinner tonight. But I've also realized in the last like 5 minutes, I'm going to be really tired when I get off of here tonight. So I'm going to call my friend and I'm going to say, I'm going to take a rain check because, I'm really tired, and I'll tell her all the things I've been doing. And so she'll have sympathy for me, and she'll probably agree because she's probably really tired too. So, and my husband's out tonight with some friends. And so, I get all ready. I put on my PJs, I climb into bed, and I'm about to go to sleep when my phone rings. Now, you have to decide who's on your end of the phone, but I answer the phone, and this man with a British accent asks for me. And I'm like, this is Jenny. And he goes, Jenny, this is Mick Jagger. Now, Mick Jagger, it's been Mick Jagger, it's been Oprah, it's been Sting and David Bowie, some of my big rock stars. But tonight it's Mick Jagger. And Mick says, I'm at the airport with a layover, and I hear you're a big fan. If I send a car for you, will you come and have dinner with me? Now, in that moment, am I going to go, oh, Mick, I wish you'd called me like yesterday because, I've been busy and I've been working so hard, and I'm just too tired tonight, Mick. Thanks for thinking of me. Am I going to say that? Go like this if you think I'm going to say that. I'm not going to say that, am I? Now, what shifted? I'm I'm still I haven't slept yet. I'm probably still tired, but what shifted is my priorities because I got some new information. Now, especially women watching this, we women tend to overdo and think that we're not supposed to rest or not supposed to take time off when we're tired finally. I'm not saying don't rest when you need to rest. I'm just saying be sure the real issue is that you're too tired, because often we'll use that as an excuse to not do something. We'll use it as an excuse to get out of something, or to not take a risk, or to just let ourselves off the hook when we maybe have promised ourselves we're going to do something. Just check in and make sure, and I ask myself this sometimes, what would I do if Mick called? What would I do if Mick called? Well, if Mick called, I'd probably ask him if I could take a 30-minute nap and then meet him. That probably would have been okay, wouldn't it? And so I just like to use kind of silly examples that we have in life to show how absurd this is sometimes, that we just throw out. I don't have enough money. When we say we don't have enough money, what are we telling the universe? I'm broke. That's an affirmation. I am broke. And I think it's a Jan Van Zandt who used to say, don't ever say you're broke. Say that you're just having a challenging cash flow situation, because that's a little bit more empowering. But to say I'm broke, what happens there, and it happens also with time, money, and energy, if I use any of those, what happens is the door slams shut. The door of opportunity slams shut. And what I don't do is look for any solutions. So let's say there's something coming up that I really want to attend, but I'm a little short in the money department. If I just say I can't afford it, or I'm broke, door slams shut. What if I say, I really want to do that, but I also need to pay my mortgage this month? You've got to be real about what's in the bank account. We deal with facts, right? We have to deal with facts. Here's what's in the bank account right now. What can I do to bring that money in? Let's see if we're just listening to ourselves say, I can't afford it. I can't afford it is an end, period. It's like there's nothing else to do at that point. Same thing with the time and the energy, the same thing. I'm too tired. I don't have enough time. I mean, how many times have I used "I'm too busy" as a badge of honor almost? Oh, I'm just so busy. And then I've had people say to me, "Oh, Jenny, I don't know how you do all that you do." And I'm like, I don't know, but I just get it done somehow, kind of like martyr stuff, right? And so what happens if we shift that script a bit, flip that script and say, how can I find more time for what's important? How can I create more money, manifest more money, attract more money for what's important? And how can I get my energy up for what's important? This way we can choose from a place of what I call conscious power and to spend our time, money, and energy this way. Otherwise, we become an unconscious victim of our circumstances. Money has a lot of power over us sometimes. And I heard somebody say one time that all this is dirty paper with dead people's faces on it. And we give it so much power over us because we don't make it our friend. So, if I can look at money and go, I want more, how can I do it? We get creative then. We get curious then. Otherwise, we just shut the door and nothing else happens. And so there's a story I'm going to leave you all with about a man who woke up one morning and discovered that he was a zombie. He walks out into the kitchen with his wife and he goes, I turned into a zombie overnight. And she said, that's just silly. What are you talking about? You're not a zombie. You look just the same as you did last night before you went to bed. And she said, I think, and he just kept insisting. And so she was getting a little concerned. So she decided to call their friend who was a medical doctor to come over and give him a check. And she said, I've called the doctor. He's going to come over and talk with you. And the doctor came in and he said to the man, I hear you think you're a zombie. And the man said, I don't think I'm a zombie. I am a zombie. And the doctor asked him a number of questions. There was nothing he could do to change the man's belief that he was a zombie. And so the doctor goes out and says, I can't do anything with him. I think maybe he's having a crisis of faith. You might want to call your minister. So she calls their minister. The minister comes in and says to the man, I hear you think you're a zombie. The man says, I don't think I'm a zombie. I am a zombie. And the minister is trying to explain to him that zombies probably don't go to church and he's never seen a zombie in church. And he certainly doesn't look like a zombie and, so on and so forth. Nothing he could say could convince the man that he was not a zombie. He says to the man's wife, I think he's losing it. Here's a card of a friend of mine who's a psychiatrist. Call him. So the psychiatrist walks in and says to the man, I hear you think you're a zombie. Now, but this time the man's getting a little exasperated because not only does he think he's a zombie, he knows he's a zombie. And so he's getting a little annoyed. And the psychiatrist said, well, let me ask you a question. Do zombies bleed? And the man says, well, no, of course zombies don't bleed. They're the living dead. They don't even have blood. So the psychiatrist reaches into his pocket, pulls out a little pin, takes the man's finger, pricks it, squeezes it, and as the blood is running down the man's finger, he says, well, I'll be darned. Zombies do bleed. And I love this story because it shows the extent that we will sometimes do to keep our stories correct and real and believe them, right? That we can adjust and make anything match our point of view if it's important enough to us. So you can either manipulate the facts to justify staying the same, or you can step out and make some bold new choices. It's strictly up to us to get out of our way. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Virginia.
you. Thank you, Jenny
I
Roberts.
laughed so much.
What did you say?
I laughed so much. Just kernels of truth just wrapped into humor. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's the human condition. It's what we do.
And see, I characterize Science of Mind as change your thinking to change your life.
Basic, that's the basic, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You are exactly what your story says you are.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
make up a good one. Make up a good one. Make it as atrocious as you want to, as far as I'm concerned, because you are exactly what you think you are.
That's right. I agree. Dan, you want to turn off the recording and we'll
I
chat
will right now. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, y'all.
It is so fun to listen to you again.